Well, hello and welcome to episode 60 of It's Never Sunny in Seattle, a Seattle Mariners podcast. I'm your host today, Evan James, joined by my co-hosts, as always, Michael Ahedo and Andres Jorstad. We're going to kick it off today with the exciting news. The Mariners won last night. They got another dominant performance out of ascending ace George Kirby. And I'm going to kick it over to Mikey right away because George has been incredibly impressive lately. And Mikey had some tweets last night putting George in some rarefied competition this year for I want to say it's 2 strike counts. Is that correct? Or strike counts overall?
Strikeouts overall, yeah.
Strike counts overall. He was right behind Tyler Anderson, actually was the name that really stuck out to me when I was reading that particular list. Go figure. But he's just been tremendously impressive as a rookie, going again 6 shutout innings yesterday. It's hard to ask for much more from a rookie pitcher in general, but he has been so special that I think it's begged the question, is he better even than a lot of us anticipated he possibly could be? And I think, Mikey, you've seen some underlying information that makes us think, yeah, he might be something beyond what we had ever dreamed of.
Yeah, and it's basically, he was throwing the fastball and he didn't have much to go with it. Like the curveball, I think, in terms of strikes, in terms of like not throwing balls with it, has been his next, I suppose, best pitch, but it's also just to get me over curveball. Like its whiff percentage is 5%, which is literally 3 times lower than his fastball. And that has to do with, where he throws it and where hitters do or do not swing at it. But I basically wrote about this at Baseball Prospectus, and I was like, I wrote the Mariners won't stop throwing 2-seam fastballs. And so, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like Kirby has been nearly as good as Marco has been bad since we just said that we weren't going to make this a Marco hate pod.
Yeah, I put a ban on any Marco mentioning for the rest of the podcast.
So yeah, in terms of run value, again, right above Tyler Anderson, negative 10.6 cents. He added the 2-seam fastball, and he had already been, I should know, before he added the 2-seam, he already was very good. He was already throwing a bunch of strikes. It's mainly been that now guys can't sit on the fastball, because even though he had good command, they could say, well, I'm going to spit on, if it's anything that's not 95, if it's a changeup, if it's a slider, if it's a curveball, I'm going to spit on it. And, for a while, guys were lighting up the slider and the curveball and fastball, but now he hasn't given up a home run since he added the 2-seam fastball. So, and he didn't give up a run last night. He gave up an earned run, but he didn't, allow any runs. So yeah, I got a reply from someone who is also a stats nerd and said it's kind of a hot take, I suppose, to call someone without a good secondary, you could even say a plus secondary, an ace. And I don't know if I'd call him an ace now, but he's pitching like an ace. The results have been like ace-like since he added the 2-seam. And I think based on his strike throwing with his 4-seam and sinker, the ability to throw strikes with the curveball, and the sweeper, you might have noticed last night, a lot of elevated sweepers for flyouts. That's a thing. That's sustainable. So I think one of the sweeper or changeup develops into a plus offering, because the changeup specs or like traits are really good. That thing gets a ton of depth. So yeah, I think one of them rounds out, and I do think that he becomes an ace inevitably.
He's pacing for, if he had pitched a full season this year, he's pacing for a 3.5 win season by F4. That's pretty close to acedom. That's only like an adjustment or two away, and he's still making improvements. Like every month he's getting so much better. But I think it's especially impressive how he did last night against Atlanta when you consider that they roughed Robbie Ray up, just the night before. This is a really freaking good offense. I mean, there are no holes in the Atlanta offense. And I just want to say how freaking unfair it is that they just won a World Series and all of a sudden they added like the best rookie pitcher and position player in baseball besides Julio. And they added Vaughn Grissom, who's really good. And they got Matt Olson to replace Freddie Freeman. So it's like, no loss really there. Who else? Kyle Wright is now pitching for them, who's really good. It's just like they are like better than they were and younger than they were when they won the World Series, which is just really annoying. I hope that the Mariners can win a World Series and then produce like 2 incredible rookies the next year. Like,
let's just start with the World Series.
A baseball, yeah, exactly. But it's just like a baseball dream. Oh, I forgot William Contreras too, who's like a really good catcher now, developing into an all-star.
They're scary,
but yeah, I would not want to face them in a World Series, frankly. And we're recording this before Sunday's game, so if they win the series, I'll be blown away. But even having won one game, I think is just like a good outcome for Seattle. So even if they lose today, like 8-0, I will be happy with how this series played out. But on Kirby, I just think it's really impressive how he just like isn't afraid to attack these really strong lineups. And the walks being so low in a rookie season is pretty unprecedented. I mean, I don't think we've seen anything like this from Mariners pitcher since Cliff Lee when he walked like one batter in July before we traded him. So it's pretty cool to see it happen again for a guy that we know is going to stick around for a while. I'm really excited about, the Mariners when they make the playoffs, what that rotation can look like. And I know this is something that, we had a question on. So I'm kind of leaning into this. Question from Meow Mix wondering if we would have Gilbert or Kirby in the playoff rotation / what would a playoff rotation look like? I think I'm pretty firmly, Castillo, Ray, Kirby. Like, I think it's pretty easy. And if you're starting three guys in a series, and then once you get deeper into the playoffs, you add Gilbert, and that's a really strong 4. But I think Gilbert has to be the odd man out at this point.
This isn't close for me, but I'm interested, Evan, to what you have to say too.
There's 2 answers I have to that question. The first is that I agree. I would definitely pitch Kirby, but I don't think the Mariners will. I think they will go with the more experienced guy, the more veteran guy on the team, and they will pitch Gilbert. And the hope is obviously that you don't need to go to 4 games, that they win in 3, but I don't think it's that big a deal. I understand why we asked this question, but I think that the Mariners have proven over the course of this season that they're going to put their faith in the guys that Scott trusts. And it's not that Scott doesn't trust Kirby. It's that Kirby is a rookie and Logan is not. And I think that's really what it comes down to. What about you, Mikey?
First, this is unreal. So Kirby is the next lowest after Cliff Lee, right after Blake Bevan and Mike Leake, and like down the list is like Aaron Harang. So Jesus,
the orangutan.
Yeah.
He had 2 complete game shutouts that year.
God, he did, didn't he? What do y'all think the walk percentages are of Cliff Lee and George Kirby?
Are we talking like whole Mariners career for Cliff Lee, or are we talking like month, like his best month?
Just wasn't he only for a year?
He was here for half a year, but I'm just wondering if you're doing it month by month or if it's
okay. His time here.
Isn't it like 3%? Something
it was really absurd.
Kirby's is 3%. Cliff Lee's is half of that. 1.5. 1.5. So let's see.
I love Cliff Lee.
In 103 innings, he walked. Where's walks? He walked 6 fucking hitters.
Yeah, I know. I remember. I looked back at that like a few months ago, but you never forget that kind of thing.
Never forget.
That's like a walk every 4 starts, basically. Every 3 or 4 starts, he'll walk 1 person. Yeah,
2.34 ERA. That's insane. Back to what was actually asked of me. Yeah, I don't think it's close right now because of how the 2 are trending. Like Kirby is kind of catching steam, And Logan has looked pretty mortal.
Well, he's gotten better. Like his last outing was really good,
and that's because he added a 2-seamer. I actually don't know how much he threw it in his last game, but I think only a couple times. But that that's kind of enough. Something that really interests me about Kirby is how he uses his 2-seam. Do y'all have any idea like what I'm gonna say about it?
Like the usage rate?
Just like where he throws it.
Oh, always inside, I'm guessing.
He kind of goes in and out with it, but there's something else.
Does he throw it up in the zone?
He throws it up in the zone a lot. And it makes sense. Like it's a riding, 2-seamer. But yeah, he elevates it pretty good, like almost at the letters, like in the upper right, like upper third. Yeah, it's in the upper third. Which is pretty cool. Like it doesn't get hit hard up there. But also, throws those front door 2-seam fastballs to lefties and also throws it to his arm side. So yeah, Kirby's the guy for me. I kind of wonder, it's a little different, but I remember Shane Bieber maybe in 2020 when he had his huge breakout year. I think whatever it was when he faced the Yankees.
Yeah.
Before he had the cutter, they just spat on everything breaking because he threw the curveball he threw like 20%, in the zone. Slider probably 30. So they just spat on everything and sat on the fastball. I think maybe you could do that with Kirby. And again, I was literally thinking about this last night. I don't know what the fuck I was doing where I was thinking about Shane Bieber and George Kirby, but the difference between the two, because they both have plus command, plus command, Kirby can tunnel the 2-seam off the fastball. He can make that thing run, whereas Bieber doesn't have that. And, I don't know. So that's maybe what I would, think would be the case for a team. But yeah, big time Timmy Jim. Big time Kirby over Gilbert for me right now. But I'm going to pull up Gilbert's numbers.
Such a good problem to have a guy who's throwing to a 3.23 ERA is like the last guy out. We were talking about like in the spring, whether Gilbert was a Cy Young contender, and now we're saying he's not in the playoff rotation. So it's pretty cool that we got like pretty much exactly what we wanted, because I think in like the winter we were saying, oh, they need to add a Luis Castillo type to like really solidify this rotation, and it's done like exactly that. It's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah. Gilbert did throw 10% 2-seam fastballs in his last game. So
that's a pretty high percentage for a new pitch. So
yeah, that's encouraging. Seems like I was really excited about the curveball. It went from 10 to 11 to 14 to 18 to 19%. And then in September, he's thrown at 6%. So that's great. He's pretty much going fastball, slider, 2-seam.
I was listening to the Wheelhouse podcast, and Jerry was talking a little bit about both Kirby and Gilbert. And the thing that they have in common is that they give up high exit velocities when they do get hit, particularly when they're throwing their fastball in the zone. And Jerry was pretty clear that that's a byproduct of the strikes that they throw. That if Gilbert was to throw the ball out of the zone more, he would probably get more swings and misses or more walks or whatever, but he's going to give up that loud contact. And we've seen Gilbert give up a lot of that loud contact recently, but I thought it was interesting where you said they're trending in different directions. They are, but for almost exactly opposite reasons. It feels like Kirby has figured out how to use his full repertoire and his new pitch to work to his advantage, to manage that hard contact, to get the strikeouts, to continue not to walk anybody, keep hitters guessing. And Gilbert has gone the other way, and he's essentially limited the secondary offerings that he's showing guys. He's using them more as kind of a get me over, a show me pitch, and he is giving up more loud contact than ever on the fastball. He's had 2 good starts in a row, and so my question to you, Mikey, is: was there anything specific he did in these last 2 shutout starts where you look at that and you think he can sustain this? He can sustain kind of giving up runs the way he has over these last 2 starts? Or should we be concerned that he's continuing to move in this direction where he is giving up loud contact and he's struggling to manage it sometimes?
I think the thing that I'm noticing the most when I look is his swing and miss percentage in September's up pretty good, which is 2 starts, I believe. Especially on his fastball. And this is a swing and a miss, so it's not just swinging strike percentage, but that's encouraging. I'll look at his end zone swing and miss because that matters a lot. Yeah, like it's small sample size, but all of his pitches are really up. Again, I think it's important to look at, like, you want to look at when something changed. So I'm looking at his numbers after he added the 2-seam fastball. It seems like he's throwing more in terms of like called strikes plus whiffs. He's throwing more strikes with his 4-seam fastball, which is really significant. At least he's throwing more called strikes and whiffs, which I think matters. Yeah, less balls are going into play, so that's good because, again, if any pitch is going to get hit hard from Logan Gilbert, it's the fastball. So if you're limiting how many of those go into play, that's 2% of that ball and play percentage of that one pitch. Like, it's small but significant. Can go towards other things like foul balls and balls, strike, whatever. But yeah, really, I think it's just he's just throwing more strikes and he's avoiding harder contact. Like, he's doing the thing that Kirby was doing, but to a lesser extent. And again, we're gonna have to watch it over a larger sample of time. But 3 starts now, Logan Gilbert hasn't given up a home run, and I don't know, 1% general, like over the season, 1% of his fastballs have been home runs. So I don't know. I don't know if that's, significant enough.
Am I mistaken in thinking his velocity is up too? Because his last couple of starts, obviously he's been pulled, they were pitching him all the way for a while. Through most of the season, they were giving him like up to 110 pitch run roughly and having him go 7 innings. They've been pulling him at 6 innings last 2 starts, but he's gassing it up there at 99 in the 6th inning. You don't see that all the time from Logan. Has his velocity ticked up at all over the last couple months?
I think since August, he has comfortably been 96. I mean, he's kind of been there since late June. He just had a little dip for a couple games. I think what might be notable is that while he's doing that, his slider and changeup velo are dipping. And again, we talked about fatigue. Like, is that fatigue? I don't know. But it is notable because that means more separation for those. The slider in particular is getting a lot more depth, which could be good for whiffs. Although I think based on his slider numbers, it's not been great.
Can I ask you a question that's kind of related, since we're just playing Atlanta? Would you rather have Kirby and Gilbert or Strider and Kyle Wright?
Oh, that's mean. Wright hasn't been very good since the beginning of the season, right? Right.
I think he has dipped a little bit.
I think I'd rather have Kirby and Gilbert. Yeah, Wright has dipped back.
He has the same ERA as Gilbert, literally the exact same ERA.
Yeah, his WOBA and ERA, those numbers are good. it's mostly, I think, for Kyle Wright, that I think Logan Gilbert has a better foundation. Wright throws his curveball a lot, and wow, his fastball has been bad this year. Just don't throw it, dude. Has like 12 in run value. That's really bad. I think when you have a good fastball, that's a good that's a good foundation to start with. We've talked a lot about him being a pronator and what that means. Kyle Wright has I think probably a good two-seam fastball. I don't know why he doesn't throw that more. This is beside the point. Yeah. And Strider, I don't know. Like, I could see a scenario in which he takes a step back and is more ordinary.
Well, I think that the worry is that he just turns into a reliever, like Matt Brash, kind of, right?
Yeah, his to me, his command's been good enough. I'm really trying to think. I think between Kirby and Gilbert, you have a better mix of floor, but also like nice upside. Because I think this is like, this year is Kirby's floor. Yeah, and Gilbert's pitched really well. So
for those of you not on the podcast or not watching the podcast, Evan cracked the biggest smile when he said this is Kirby's floor.
I've just gotten everything I wanted this year, man. And I've said this before, but between Cal taking off, between Julio being rookie of the year contender basically all the way to the end of the season, and Kirby being lights out, I don't know what else I would have asked for. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, as the number one Kyle Lewis fanboy in Seattle, I would have loved for Kyle Lewis to have hit and not got concussed by the freaking Astros. But, you know, like, you take the good with the bad, and there's been so much good this year. And we're the pitching podcast. Like, we do this collectively because Mikey loves pitching, I love pitching, you love pitching. The Mariners pitching has been lit this year in ways that I don't think we fully anticipated. We looked at this rotation coming into the year and we're like, yeah, like maybe they could be pretty good, but the addition of Castillo, Kirby being just unreal, Kirby being Cliff Lee, like I feel like I said that back in April, like there's a little Cliff Lee in him, and here he is doing it. Like I wanted it, and I got it, and I feel so good about it. But I think we should move on, because we've done 20 minutes on Kirby and Gilbert, and I think that's how it should be on this podcast. We should always allot that kind of time for those guys. But I do want to talk a little bit about the new rules, because they are interesting. I was reading over them, but I was hoping that one of you two had dug in a little more than I have over the last couple days, and can give us a little bit of a rundown, in particular as it relates to the shift, because I wasn't entirely sure I understood the distinction for how that's going to work. Have you guys read any about that?
Yeah, so basically the shift isn't going to change as much as people think it is. And I've seen a lot of videos from like Mike Petriello on Twitter, you know, being like, this defensive alignment would still be illegal, and it looks like a shift still. So the only thing that the rules are going to stop is 4-man outfield or 5-man infields, or shifts in which you have 3 guys to one side of a base. So those are the only real rule changes. So technically, you could still put the shortstop functionally behind second base, which is still a shift. And you could move the third baseman to the shortstop position. Like, there's nothing preventing that kind of a shift. And that's pretty common. So you're still going to see a lot of like lefty shifts. They're just not going to be like as extreme as we're used to seeing, where you have the shortstop all the way in the second base position and you have the second baseman playing like a shallow right field. So those are really the only shift changes. So I think people are kind of overblowing how much the change is going to be to that degree. The one I'm actually excited about, the pitch clock. And now I know, saying all these changes, I know that, you know, MLBPA rebuffed all these changes. I wonder if that wasn't just like they wanted to get something out of it too, like, you know, because these are universally good for owners because it speeds up the game and it, you know, gives them what they want. The players got nothing out of it. So I wonder if it's like not so much the players hate it as the players want something in return for getting something the owners really wanted. Yeah, but regardless, the pitch clock I'm really excited about. I heard on Rates and Barrels they were pointing out there are 0 starting pitchers who currently average under the threshold that the timer will set. So literally every single starting pitcher in baseball will have to shorten the time between their pitches, which is pretty incredible.
I like that a lot, actually.
I should say they're not only just starters, but relievers too. There's not a single pitcher in baseball who throws under 14 seconds on average. Throws between, anyway, you know what I'm saying. And there's some pitchers that are like, up to the high 20s and 30s. So this is, for some pitchers, it's going to be like a big difference. And one of the things that Rates and Barrels was also pointing out was that what this could do really is it could make pitchers lose velocity. Because if you're getting more fatigued, by being forced to throw more consistently, you're not going to be throwing as hard. So there's some guys who are going to lose velo from this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the guys who like really can't afford to lose velo, it could hurt them. But for the guys who like it doesn't really matter so much, it might like George Kirby. I don't know how much it will really impact him, because like the velo for him is more of just like a cherry on top of his being really amazing at everything else. But for Logan, it could hurt him because that velo when he's throwing lower 90s, he's not as effective. Robbie Ray too. We've seen that with Ray, especially being just a 2.5 pitch guy. But those are the big rule changes that we're looking at. The bigger bases also, I don't know how much it's going to impact things. It really just might decrease injuries, I guess is what people are saying, especially with the Ty France injuries that we've been seeing. I'm hoping that maybe that'll cut down on those.
It should mean more stolen bases too.
Yeah.
It's more base, more base to hold on to.
Right. So what are your thoughts on the changes, Mikey?
I'm pretty neutral to pro on all of them. I think I think teams will find some workarounds for the shift. I'm just no longer interested in watching people ground out to shallow right field. Yeah,
I agree.
I don't know. We've talked a lot about like Formula One changes things every year, and I don't necessarily want to start that precedent, I guess, but like also already they have. So I don't know. Like, I'm not a baseball purist, but I don't think it's good for the game. I don't think it's exciting to watch. I don't think it makes people want to watch. So anything pitch clock, I think, is on the whole, which is I think what you want, going to swing it somewhat towards hitters, because I don't think most pitchers are going to be losing like a tick of velo, but they're going to lose a little something, and I think that adds up over time, which I think is good. I think the bigger bases, and they're doing the pickoff rule where you can basically only throw over 3 times, but the third time, if you throw over, you better make sure that you get them out or it's a balk. All of these things are good for the game, I think. And I think you could argue that the shift isn't even going to do anything. The shift ban, if you want to call it that. So it's like, why not try that? With the pitch clock, I do worry about injury. I kind of think maybe that they should have, I don't know, made it like, what's it, 20 seconds?
Is it 20 or is it
14 seconds?
14? That's too low. That's like Bieber is a fucking fast worker, and he does 13 to 15, I think.
Yeah, that's why I was saying nobody averages below the threshold, and you're going to need to do better than just averaging the threshold, because that means that you're, half your pitches are too late.
I mean, yeah, think about it. Like if you lift weights, you're supposed to take 45 seconds to like 90 seconds off between reps. Like, I don't know. That's too low. I think 20 seconds is perfectly fine.
I would have agreed with that too.
And I think that's what the clock has been up in, what they have up in fields right now. So I don't love that. And I do wonder if it does lead to more injury. In general, without, the finer details, I'm pro pitch clock. I'm pro shift ban. I'm, what the fuck else are they doing? They should have bigger bases. Also, they should have, like in softball, like the orange base, the double base at first base. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah. No, I agree.
It doesn't fucking make any sense that they have one.
Well, I'm surprised that like the Ty France injuries don't happen more frequently, frankly.
I know.
Where people like step on the guy,
And I was having a conversation on Twitter about it. Like, there's really no reason for your right foot to be the one that strikes first base. And Brian Menendez,
you mentioned that about
right. And Brian Menendez
that about
was
Ramirez.
Yeah, he replied and he was like, "Well, I don't think people are taught or think about the foot that is striking first base." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't think so either." But the way that your body's fucking formatted, if you're trying to avoid a base runner, you're not going to use your right foot. And it doesn't really make sense because you're running through the right side of the base. Why would you use your right foot? So I don't know. I think that they should do something about that too. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
I have a couple of questions specifically as it relates to the pitch clock. One is that, do you know, are they starting the pitch clock when the pitcher catches the ball? Because the pitcher throws the ball, catcher catches it, throws it back to them. Does that pitch clock start when they catch the ball again?
I think it's when they catch the ball again.
Okay. See, that makes sense to me because there's all kinds of variance that is built in there when the catcher catches it, has to swap it out with the umpire or whatever, do whatever. So that makes some sense. I could see that number making, maybe it's 15, maybe it's 17 over the next year or two, but I could see it kind of being in this ballpark as guys get used to the cadence of working with it. Because the big thing now is that baseball players collectively are used to being able to take as much time as they want to do whatever they want, right? Like, the pitchers can take as long as they want walking around the mound. The hitters can take as long as they want walking around the batter's box for the next pitch. Like, if we get players used to a cadence of the game moving quicker and being expedited, I could see this working out. I do wonder also how, I don't know if you guys saw, and I hate to quote him on here, I don't actually follow John Boy on any media. I just occasionally see his tweets because I follow so much baseball stuff, and Twitter's like, oh, you like baseball stuff? Here's a baseball thing that's popular. And the one that I did see a couple of days ago was he reposted somebody in the minor leagues doing challenging a pitch call using the automated strike zone. And so he threw a pitch, umpire called it a ball. He does a little, I think he tips his cap and the umpire like signals and it pauses. So the whole game gets paused for a couple of seconds while they get the call. They do the review, got it called at a strike and then kept going. I wonder how they're going to roll something like that into this new rule, because again, that's another layer of logistics of somebody else is going to hold the ball. Somebody else there's going to be all this kind of transitory time in there, 30, 40 seconds. I'm interested to see how they roll all that together. And I think it will take practice. And all these rules I think are fine. They're good. The baseball players will ultimately be fine with them when they've had some time to deal with it, right? Like, be it automated strike zone or new bases or whatever. Get them used to it. They're creatures of habit. Baseball players can adjust. And to your point, Mikey, which is that, F1 changes the rules every year. I think baseball, they don't change the rules on paper every year, but the way baseball is been played has changed every year anyways, right? With the development of the shift, which is not an official rule, with the changing of the ball, which has led to very different offensive environments in 2 of the last 3 years. This is happening. And with sticky stuff, which they were very much enforcing as a rule for half a season last year and apparently is not worth anybody's time anymore. This is, this stuff is going on. So I'm pro putting the pen to paper and making some of these things official in ways that baseball has often been okay with it being kind of like colloquial. You know what I mean? Like, do whatever, kind of. And I think it's good to get this standardized and make it a little more official.
They did
Let's
check.
talk about the
They checked Karinchak's hair. I don't know if y'all
Really?
saw. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, Rocco Baldelli of the Twins demanded that they check his hair. Then they're like, everything's fine, which is total bullshit. But
Wow. Nice, Rocco.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the last big piece of news, which is that MLB formally, I don't know if they actually recognized it, but they put out a press release that they formally intend to recognize the minor league baseball union. I wasn't entirely clear about what this specific players union is. Can you guys fill me in a little bit on what that actual entity is to some degree?
Well, I'm trying to think. The ML. So the minor league players are joining the MLBPA. They're joining the Players Association. Is that the entity that you're confused about?
So this is not the minor league players making their own union. This is them joining the MLBPA.
Yes, but they will bargain for themselves. So they will not be bargaining as part of the MLBPA's, collective bargaining agreement. They're going to have their own collective bargaining agreement.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That seems like a really good news to me, because obviously they have an entirely different set of needs. Given that the minor leagues are very much a different entity than the major leagues. Is there anything specific that stuck out to you guys as being particularly advantageous about this, other than that it gives them a bigger seat at the table in negotiations?
Well, I don't know if you guys listen to Tipping Pitches, which is, if you guys, if anyone out there doesn't listen to them, they're a terrific baseball labor podcast, and they did a really good breakdown of the unionization effort, which they've been pushing for a long time on that show. But one of the things they pointed out is that what's advantageous for the minor leaguers joining the MLBPA as opposed to forming their own thing is that they are joining an entity that has done this before and that has specifically bargained with owners before. But for them, it's much better to join an organization that has decades of experience, and they've got a huge foundation of lawyers and baseball specialists. I mean, it's just like a perfect union for the minor leaguers, because if they were trying to do this all themselves, they would have to build it from the ground up. They would have to deal with a lot of bullshit from the owners trying to stamp down their efforts that they now have protection from with the MLBPA. So frankly, it's kind of surprising that, this wasn't something they've done sooner. But it's pretty perfect. The people that were, running the advocates for minor leaguers have joined the MLBPA. So they will be continuing those efforts on behalf of the minor leaguers with the MLBPA. So they now have their own little wing building within the MLBPA too, in addition to being able to use their resources. So I think this is pretty much perfect. And because they're bargaining for their own CBA, they can get started right away. They don't have to wait for the next MLB CBA to come up in 5 years. They can start bargaining now and make inroads and make improvements right away, which is really exciting, I think.
Mikey, anything to add to that?
I mean, yeah, I actually just started. I decided to listen to Tipping Pitches. I think I've listened to nearly 2 episodes to see what it's about. Not much to add. I think it's notable that MLB is voluntarily agreeing to recognize, the addition of minor league players into the union. Trying to think. And obviously it makes sense to have one entity representing, players of major and minor league, and I do wonder, when we think about the CBA, how negotiations would have been affected if they were already part of the union. So, I mean, yeah, not much to add other than it being huge fucking news. Like, one of the bigger things that's happened in MLB for a really, really long time. Because, again, the CBA, like, the changes that we want to see are the changes that help the bottom whatever percent of players, they didn't do much to help them. Like, it's almost kind of a shame that we're playing baseball right now and that, whatever. Yeah, this is great news, and I'm excited to see what happens next.
It also, I think the minor leagues are a very easy group of people to root for because this is very much against the millionaires versus billionaires BS line that you hear all the time, because there's not a single player in the minor leagues who would be under this CBA who is a millionaire. Because even like the guys who are in AAA, if they're on the 40-man roster, they are being bargained for by the MLB, part of the MLBPA. So, these guys are all, well, not all, but mostly making less than minimum wage. They're making poverty level income, if that even, in a lot of cases. And I don't know if you guys saw the tweets today from Evan Drellick mentioning that this will go all the way down to the complex leagues, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Because those are the players that need it the most. The only group that will not be included is the DSL leagues. I'm guessing that there's some sort of complications there with the international players. Bargaining in two different countries is probably a difficult thing to manage. I hope that someday they will include those players as part of their union as well, because they definitely deserve to be represented as much as anyone. But in general, I'm just really interested to see what happens next, and I'm surprised by how willing MLB has been to just accept this all. I really thought this was going to be kind of a bloodbath of sorts.
And I'm interested to, we'll see, I think, why they didn't. But yeah, I think the way that I'd frame it is, like major league players are like the petite bourgeois, petty B.
Right.
The minor leaguers are like workers, peasants, So
yes. They take the bus. The major league players get to fly first class. They have their own plane. The minor leaguers get to travel cross country in a sweaty bus. So,
and again, like the owners are the top of the class triangle. So it's like, yeah, we support MLB players too, but I think the biggest priority is like the fucking, the proletariat, the working class. So yeah, I mean, I think this is the most landmark thing that's ever happened for that group of players.
It's important to recognize too that this is the beginning, this is just the unionization and the recognition of that. They haven't actually bargained for any major victories yet, but this is the doorstep to that kind of change. So us being on the threshold of things being different and being better for minor leaguers is a good thing. I did want to circle back real quick because I really want to make sure we answer our listener questions on these episodes, because we do have a tendency to ramble and kind of pigeonhole a little bit. But Azrael PC asked, given how much the Astros shift, do you think that it'll make enough of an impact to change the Mariners' luck in games between them? I think Mikey and Anders kind of answered that question in saying that maybe no, because the way the shift is being changed is not dramatic enough that it's going to... It's not going to be a seismic shift in offense or defense. It's going to be like, 10, 15, 20% here and there as far as ground balls getting caught and converted into outs or whatever. But I don't think that's substantial enough for us to like add multiple wins against the Astros just yet.
I also want to just, the one other point, John Troopin mentioned his lookout landing breakdown of the rule changes, that the data from the minor league shows that as, sure, you'll get more singles maybe from the shift ban, but you'll also get fewer walks, because pitchers a lot of times try to pitch around guys, or they'll try to pitch a certain spots to avoid players from, punching a single through the left side. So it's really just trading singles for walks. So in the grand scheme of things, it's very little difference.
I think it'll be more than that. It's really weird. Like, I honestly feel like I need to update myself on the research, because I remember back in the day, BABIP wasn't going down, which meant, like, on the whole, it wasn't changing the landscape of if balls go into play, like, are they more likely to turn into outs? But I'm pretty sure that hitters strike out more when shifted. And obviously there are not conflating. What the fuck is the word?
Conflicting?
No. Confounds. There are confounding variables because it's like, what kind of hitters get shifted, whatever. But I think that we know the shift to be one that isn't necessarily like there is a benefit, but I think the bigger benefit is psychological. It's harder to want to pull the ball when there's, 3 guys. Why is this asshole? This guy's fucking with my sunglasses case. I don't know why he wants that. We know, sorry about that. We know that, like it's hard to want to pull the ball when you see a shift over there. And I think that affects hitters' ability to hit home runs. So I think that there will be more, maybe. And again, I need to update myself on the research, but I think functionally, it is, the changes in walks and singles. But I think then you see guys like, I don't know, Kyle Seager start to hit more doubles down the line. I don't know. Remains to be seen. I will say, just pulling numbers, past 40 years, lowest 2 teams in terms of WOBA with the shift on: Dodgers, Houston, Rays are 5th, Mariners 7th. That has to do with the quality of pitching too. So if you want to look at like the disparity between WOBA and ex-WOBA, it's like the Mariners and Houston are in like the top 10. I don't know. I think the evidence is really mixed. And then if you want to look at, I pulled at the beginning of the episode, like our hitters who hit into the shift, who's getting hurt the most. I think that JP Crawford isn't really getting hurt. I guess actually it's really worth thinking about what percentage of batted balls go into the shift, but it's mostly Cal Raleigh, Jesse Winker, Carlos Santana are losing all around about 100 points between ex-WOBA and WOBA. So they all should be, above 200 WOBA, but they're more towards 100. So there's also that. I think that this is going to really help a lot of individual players. We'll see. So I'm going to pull up, like what percentage of players, what percentage of batted balls are pulled ground balls. But in the meantime, there is that.
The Jesse Winker slander continues. Let's switch gears. We have 2 final questions. Let's do Mitch first because we had a question from Zach Bell. Are we concerned about Mitch? And from Meow Mix, would we give Mitch the qualifying offer? Just rapid fire. Am I concerned about Mitch? No. Mitch is a streaky player. Mitch came back, and for the first month, he was off the injured list. He looked like the all-star we know he can be. That's just what he does sometimes. I very specifically remember last August and September, that stretch of time, Mitch looked dreadful. I want to say he hit like 111 over last August, and then he hit something like 350 in September. So you're going to see this dichotomy of him being streaky. Not dissimilar from what we see from Cal or what we see from Winker, or what we see from anybody. He's going to ride that wave a little bit, and when he's good, he's way above average, and it's going to float his value. When he's not, he isn't. All 3 of us, let's answer the question. Would you give him the qualifying offer? Yeah, I absolutely would.
Yes.
It's not my money. Yeah.
But also, I would give him an extension.
Yeah. I think the interesting question is, what does he get on the open market? Because I would offer Mitch 2 years with a 3-year option. I think a lot of teams are going to offer him 2 years with like a 1-year option.
What was the Soler deal? Was it 330? I think you could get something like that.
Yeah, I've heard comps for Mitch for both the Soler deal and the who's the
Avi
outfielder?
Garcia?
No, who's the outfielder who signed in Houston? Michael something?
Oh, Brantley.
Michael Brantley, was the other like really obvious comp I've heard. And Mitch is a lot like Michael Brantley, minus some of the on base percentage, and he's a little younger, obviously. But like Michael Brantley got a 3-year deal. Right, like 3-year deal for Mitch. Yeah,
I'm trying to think. Yeah, Soler got 218. Rosario got 220. Pham 220. I think you're probably looking at that for Mitch. No one that isn't like a Schwarber or anything got 4 years. So I think max Mitch is getting 2 years. Mark Canha got 220. There's no way Mitch is getting 220 to me. I could see like, I don't know, like see 29, something like that. Which is what Soler got actually. So I think Soler is actually a really nice comp. I will say that this stretch of 15 games, so his rolling 15 game WOBA on the 9th was the lowest that had been since the 23rd of June last year. But before that, it's the lowest it's been since 2017. So this is more than I think just a blip. And I don't think that he can't come back from it, but he was really, really consistent for the first several, however many plate appearances of the year. Kind of wonder if he's hurt.
Could be. That is his MO, isn't it? Poor bitch. Not really, but let's move on to the last thing here in the interest of time for Durs. And actually, Durs, I want you to preface it. You and some of the other Lookout Landing people, we're looking at Julio's stolen bases and noticing a trend and maybe what we should do about it. Take us away.
Yeah, so Julio, started off by being the leader in stolen bases, I believe, through May. He had 21 stolen bases before the All-Star game, but since then he has only 3. So he's been a lot less aggressive on the base paths. I think this is potentially due to a number of factors. One of them being he could be dealing with an injury. He could be dealing with fatigue. He could be just focusing less on that aspect of things. He could be trying to slow that down for his own health. His speed could be, aging out already. I think it's more along the lines of, one of the earlier options in terms of fatigue and or him just trying to keep himself healthy. But either way, the whole reason behind him being the leadoff hitter is because he's the fastest guy on the team. But if he isn't stealing bases anymore and using that speed, then you're seeing what you've been seeing a lot, which is, Julio gets on base with a single or a walk and then Ty grounds into a double play. And the question then becomes, is this the most optimal use of our lineup? Because Julio, I think more profiles. I mean, you see comps like, Julio for a leadoff hitter would be like a George Springer type or a Ronald Acuna type. Those kinds of players certainly exist with power and speed, and you put him at the top. But you could also put him down in the 2 or the 3 spot, and he would be equally effective. So I guess the question is, should the Mariners consider moving Julio off the leadoff spot? And kind of shuffling the order around to make better use of these guys' skill sets. To that end, I would say that I think the way this team is currently constructed is best if Julio leads off. But I think the ideal scenario for Julio is that he isn't the leadoff guy. So I think that they should hope to, this winter, acquire somebody who could be a regular leadoff guy. Because I don't really like JP in the leadoff spot, and I really don't like Frazier in the leadoff spot.
I have a table setter.
Okay.
You know who walks a lot?
Are you going to say Jesse Winker?
Jesse Winker walks 20% of the time. 359.
It's not the worst option on the
OBP.
Team at all.
His OBP is 28 points higher than Julio's.
I think they've done this before too.
The Mariners.
He did lead off for a while. Yeah, I feel like that earlier
like once
this
or
summer.
twice.
Yeah,
but it was earlier in the year, I think, when he was struggling. But yeah, I mean, we know obviously it's nice to have speed on the base paths, but we also know that what matters, more is that you get on base. I would do that. 20% walk percentage in the second half. he's hitting 20% almost above league average. That's what I do.
Yeah,
there you
I'm
have
down.
it. The only thing I would add to that is I think that I believe there's been a tactical shift for the Mariners, and they told Julio to stop trying to steal every base he can possibly take. That was a gas for the first month or two of the season because he was pulling it off successfully. He got nailed a couple of times in a row and jammed his wrist, and I think they were like, dude, just hang out on first base. It's not that big a deal. And we may see more of that later this year. We may see more of it in the playoffs if they decide to unleash him. We may see more of it next year. You're right, Durs. He just might not be a 40 stolen base guy. Like that's okay. We can all live with that. If Julio is a 20, 25 stolen base guy, even a little bit less than that, if the rest of the skill set rounds out, he's still a superstar. I think we should wrap it there for today, guys. Anything else?
No,
I'm good.
Well, I'm Evan. You can find me on Twitter at Evan James Audio. You can find Anders at Anders Jorstad. You can find Mikey at _Kuya Mikey. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts, wherever it is you stream. Additionally, please support the podcast on Patreon by going to patreon.com/neversunny in Seattle. I'll have the links for that both in the description here as well as on the YouTube video, including the link to the Discord. You can come ask us questions, chat. Pretty lively group we got in there these days. Lots of good discussion going on game days. So definitely be sure to hit that up. Ask us anything you want. We're there. Thanks for listening. Go Mariners, and playoffs in a couple weeks. We're a month out from playoffs, guys. We made it.
Let's get
we
it.
made it.